Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Our mission here, as always, is to take these complex stories, these huge piles of information, and really distill them down into the essential knowledge you need.
And today we're tackling a story that's, well, it's deeply disturbing. It takes us inside a case of American extremism that's chillingly systematic.
Yeah, it's a tough one to wrap your head around, honestly. We're looking at a case that, even now, years later, really serves as a stark warning, doesn't it? About how domestic terrorism can just fester and then explode, often where you least expect it.
Absolutely. It shows how, organized hatred, when it's combined with this kind of meticulous, almost obsessive preparation, can pose a serious threat to, well, everyone.
Exactly. So we're opening the file in the summer of 1999. We're going to trace this investigation step by step that uncovered this huge plot, a plot driven purely by extremist ideology.
And it led to, believe it or not, the largest hate crime arsenal ever discovered in U.S. history at that time.
It's staggering. Our journey begins in a place that feels like the complete opposite of the violence to come. Happy Valley, California. Picture this. July 1999. You've got rolling hills, scenic beauty. It's known for being peaceful, tranquil.
That contrast is really key here. Because this tranquil spot became the epicenter, the starting point for a targeted execution.
Right. And nationally, there was this growing awareness of hate crimes, but they often seemed random, scattered.
But what happened here, in this quiet, rural part of Northern California, it was anything but random. It was surgical. It was planned. And it was devastatingly precise.
So our deep dive today is all about connecting the dots. We have a series of brutal, seemingly unconnected hate crimes. There's a double murder, 3 synagogue arsons just weeks before, and then an attack on an abortion clinic.
And we'll follow the investigators, the long, painstaking work they did, the forensic breakthroughs, which were frankly brilliant.
Yeah, and ultimately the shocking capture of these 2 individuals, educated men, which kind of defies the stereotype, who were actively preparing for what they called an all-out war against anyone they deemed, well, impure.
And that plot, that war, really began to unfold on the morning of July 2nd, 1999, with the terrible discovery, the bodies of Gary Mattson and Winfield Motter.
The way they were found actually tells you a lot about them. Gary Mattson worked for the local agricultural department in Redding. Friends, family, colleagues, they all described him as incredibly reliable, punctual to a fault.
Right. So when he didn't show up for work that Friday morning, July 2nd, and hadn't called, that immediately set off alarm bells.
Exactly. His brother, Roger Mattson, knew instantly something was seriously wrong. It was completely out of character, so he drove out to their home, which was pretty isolated, out in the country.
Roger got there, called out for Gary and Winfield. No answer. The house looked normal from the outside mostly, but their car was missing, and there was just this silence, an unnerving silence.
And when he went inside, that's when he found them. In their elevated loft bed, Gary Mattson and his partner of 14 years, Winfield Motter, they'd been, well, executed while they slept.
The crime scene itself gave investigators immediate, horrifying insights. This wasn't some frenzied attack, this was cold, calculated.
How many shell casings did they find? It was quite a few, wasn't it?
15. 15 shell casings recovered just in that small loft area.
15. And those casings, they told a story, didn't they, about the intent?
Oh, absolutely. A chilling story. Out of those 15 shots, 14 were aimed directly at the heads of the 2 victims. The sheer severity, the overkill, investigators said the responsible parties were there, quote, to ensure that they were dead. No question about it.
You mentioned surgical precision earlier. Can you talk about that pattern they found on Winfield Motter's head? That detail is particularly grim.
It is. The sources describe a quarter-sized pattern. 3 or 4 rounds, tightly grouped, specifically on the back of Mr. Motter's head.
So the shooter had to be incredibly close, steady.
Right. Holding the weapon steady, aiming carefully, firing repeatedly at point-blank range when the victim was already down, likely already dead or dying. It shows this chilling focus, this dedication to the act, almost zero panic.
But there's a twist here, something that suggests movement calculation, right? Not all the shots came from the same spot.
Exactly. That's where it gets even more terrifyingly calculated. Most rounds suggested the shooter was standing maybe 10, 15 feet away, firing up towards the loft bed.
Okay.
But there was one shot, one specific wound to Gary Madsen's back that just didn't fit that distance or angle.
So how did that happen?
Well, the investigators figured it out. To make that shot, the shooter would have had to physically walk over to the side of the loft bed, climb up the ladder they used to get into bed.
Climb the ladder.
Yes. And then fire a final ensuring shot into Gary Madsen's back from right there, basically standing over him.
Wow. That's deliberate. Calculated movement, zero hesitation. Just pure targeted assassination. Maximum lethal impact intended.
Precisely. But despite this incredible violence concentrated on the victims, the rest of the home wasn't really disturbed.
Which must have confused the investigators initially, right? Usually, with this level of violence, you might expect a ransacking, signs of a struggle, a robbery gone wrong.
Exactly. No forced entry, no drawers pulled out, nothing tossed around. Only a few small items were missing. Their wallet and, crucially, their car.
The missing car. That immediately changes the dynamic, doesn't it?
It does. It suggests the motive wasn't simple robbery. It shifted the focus immediately. Was this personal? Was it targeted for another reason? And the car being gone? Well, that points towards maybe two perpetrators. One drives their own vehicle away, the other takes the victim's car.
Or maybe one perpetrator needing a quick escape from an isolated spot.
Possible, but the evidence started leaning towards two people being involved fairly early on. Plus, taking the car gives mobility and delays discovery.
Did they have any initial leads? Or just dead ends?
Well, there are a few initial thoughts, sort of red herrings. They looked into a possible connection to an earlier unsolved murder nearby. An elderly gentleman also shot in his bed a few miles away.
Similar method, killing people while they slept.
Right. So naturally, they had to consider, could this be a serial killer? But the victim profile here felt different.
It felt so.
Gary Madsen and Winfield Motter weren't just random targets. They were partners, together 14 years, deeply embedded in the community, known horticulturists. Gary helped found the local Carter House Museum. Winfield worked at a home and garden store. They were respected, known.
Pillars of the community, essentially.
Exactly, which makes it less likely to be a random act and more likely something personal or perhaps ideologically motivated. This wasn't just a crime. It felt like an attack on them, specifically.
Okay, so the motor is murky. The scene is brutal but focused. Where did the first real break come from?
From a piece of technology that seems almost quaint now. The answering machine tape.
The answering machine?
Yeah. Someone had changed the outgoing message. It now said something like, Winfield and I came down with something, we're pretty sick, and we're going to the Bay Area to see a specialist.
But it wasn't their voices.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Investigators knew immediately it was clearly faked.
So the killers recorded a fake message. Why?
To buy time. It's a chillingly clever tactic. Make it seem like they just went away for a few days. Delay anyone checking on them. Give themselves more time to escape. Maybe use the stolen credit cards. Let the trail go cold.
That's sophisticated and terrifying. So what did they do with the tape?
Sent it straight to the FBI lab in Quantico for enhancement urgently.
Why was enhancement so crucial? Couldn't they just listen to it?
Well, you could listen, but identifying specific voices, especially from a potentially low-quality tape recording with background noise, that's tough. They needed the FBI's tech to clean it up, isolate the voices.
And crucially, to determine if they could hear more than one person speaking on that recording.
Exactly. If they could prove two voices, it bolsters the two-perpetrator theory significantly. But for that first week or so, investigators were stuck. They had this brutal double execution, a stolen car, this weird altered tape, but no clear motive, no context.
Little did they know, the context, the bigger picture, had literally been set ablaze 2 weeks earlier, just a couple hours south.
Precisely. Exactly 2 weeks before Madsen and Motter were murdered, back on June 18th, 1999, in the early morning hours, Sacramento was hit hard. A massive, coordinated series of arsons.
Right, this wasn't just one fire, it was multiple targets, almost simultaneously.
3 Jewish facilities were hit. B'nai Israel Synagogue, Congregation Beth Shalom Synagogue, and the Knesset Israel Torah Center. The coordination, the timing, it screamed deliberate, organized hate crime.
And the damage was expensive, wasn't it?
Immense. We're talking $3 million in property damage alone. But more than that, the psychological impact was just catastrophic. The sources really emphasize this feeling of a communal sense of violation.
Understandably, targeting places of worship like that, it's an attack on identity, on safety, on the entire community.
Absolutely. And there was one detail that really drove home the emotional devastation for the Jewish community there.
The Torah scrolls.
Yes. Having to remove the sacred scrolls, the Torahs, from the burning synagogues. One member described it feeling like they were going into exile with our Torahs.
Wow. That phrase really hits hard. Evokes centuries of persecution.
It really does. And for law enforcement, it's solidified things. They knew they were dealing with perpetrators driven by deep, profound anti-Semitic hatred.
So, with something this big, the FBI and ATF arson experts were brought in immediately. You mentioned they had this almost scientific approach to investigating the fire scenes, not just looking at debris, but trying to reverse choreograph the fire's movement.
Yeah, it's fascinating work. It's part detective work, part physics, part chemistry. Fire behaves in predictable ways, mostly. So investigators look at things like the depth of the charring on wood, the way smoke travels, the V-shaped burn patterns on walls, how structures collapse.
To figure out where it started.
Exactly. Where it started, how it spread, what kind of accelerant might have been used based on how fast and hot it burned. By tracing that path backwards, they can reconstruct what the arsonists did. Where did they break in? Where did they place the incendiary devices? How did they get out?
It sounds like meticulous work, almost like archaeology.
That's a great comparison. The sources actually use that phrase, an archaeological excavation, sifting through layers of ash and debris, looking for tiny clues, fragments of devices, burn patterns.
And they determined these weren't accidental fires spreading, but deliberate multiple points of origin.
Yes. Very well planned. They found evidence of separate fires being set, specifically targeting the front of the synagogues near where the sacred scrolls, the Torahs, were kept, and also among the pews, to ensure maximum destruction.
But then the arsonists made a mistake, didn't they? Something that actually helped the investigation.
A critical mistake, fortunately for the investigators. While one synagogue was gutted, completely destroyed, at the other two locations, the fire basically fizzled out. It self-extinguished.
How does that happen? Did they just not use enough accelerant?
It sounds like a technical failure in how the devices were constructed or placed. They didn't release enough heat energy quickly enough onto the right kind of surrounding fuel to create a self-sustaining blaze.
And because the fire didn't fully take hold, evidence survived.
Crucially, yes. If everything had burned to the ground, most trace evidence would have been obliterated by the heat. But because these fires went out, investigators found intact, unignited incendiary devices.
What were they like?
Pretty crude, actually. Basically fuel jugs, like gasoline cans filled with accelerant, clearly homemade, assembled somewhere else and brought to the scene.
So these unignited bombs became forensic gold mines. What did they find on them?
This was a huge break. On the devices themselves, particularly around the wicks or where they were handled, they collected tiny bits of trace evidence. Specifically, dog hairs, chicken feathers, and some flecks of paint chips.
Dog hair, chicken feathers, and paint chips. That's
Yes.
an unusual combination.
Highly unusual and incredibly specific. It meant if they could ever find the place where those three things existed together, the environment where these devices were assembled, they'd have a powerful, undeniable link to the suspects.
Okay, that's amazing forensic potential. But how do you possibly connect, dog hair and chicken feathers found at a fire scene in Sacramento to a double murder that happened 2 weeks later, 2 hours north in Redding? They were still missing that geographical link.
That link, that geographical bridge, came from something surprisingly low-tech. Newspaper.
Newspaper? How?
Investigators were meticulously going through every single piece of debris from the synagogue fires. Inside a cardboard box, one that had somehow survived the flames at one of the scenes, they found it was lined with newspaper.
And the newspaper was from
Reading, California. The local paper from Redding, which is, as you said, about 2 hours north of Sacramento, and crucially, the same area, the same jurisdiction where Gary Mattson and Winfield Motter had just been murdered.
Wow. Okay, so suddenly these aren't separate incidents anymore. The isolated homicide in Happy Valley near Redding and the mass arsons down in Sacramento, they're potentially connected.
Exactly. First, they had the ideological link. Both seemed like hate crimes, one targeting gay men, the others targeting Jewish institutions. Now, they had a physical, geographical clue pointing towards the same region, Reading.
That convergence must have been a major turning point. It starts to suggest a larger pattern, maybe the same perpetrators.
Absolutely. It shifted the whole perspective. And they knew, investigators know this, that people who commit hate crimes often want to send a message. They want people to know why they did it.
So did they find a message at the arson scenes?
They did. At 2 of the synagogues, investigators found flyers left behind. Professionally printed flyers.
And what did they say?
Intensely anti-Semitic content, as you expect. But there was another layer too, a political dimension. The flyers were also explicitly pro-Serbia and anti-NATO.
Pro-Serbia and anti-NATO, that seems specific.
Huh.
This was 1999, so the conflict in the former Yugoslavia, particularly Kosovo, was very much in the news. How did investigators connect that to anti-Semitism?
Right. It might seem like a leap, but for certain extremist groups, particularly the ones investigators were starting to focus on, neo-Nazis, Christian identity groups, the World Church of the Creator was a big one, then it all fits together in their worldview.
How so?
They often subscribe to this conspiracy theory of ZOG, the Zionist-occupied government. They believe that major world powers, including the US and NATO, are secretly controlled by a Jewish cabal. So in their twisted logic, opposing NATO actions, like the intervention in the Balkans against Serbia, is framed as resisting this supposed Jewish control.
So attacking NATO policy was, for them, just another way of expressing their anti-Semitic and anti-government hatred.
Precisely. It all ties back to this core belief in white supremacy and the idea that a shadowy group, usually identified as Jewish, is manipulating world events and trying to undermine the white race.
Okay, so the profile of the culprit, or culprits, is getting sharper now. Likely an organized group, or at least highly organized individuals, deeply ideological, motivated by white supremacy, anti-Semitism, anti-gay hatred.
And this belief that the U.S. was being taken over by non-white groups, by Jews, blacks, Hispanics, Asians, and crucially, they saw their violence not as criminal, but as righteous. A religious cause, almost.
Yep.
An act of purification or war.
A racial holy war, some of these groups call it.
Exactly. And investigators, the public, too, were terrified. They'd struck in Sacramento, and then 2 weeks later in Happy Valley. Where are they hitting next? This self-proclaimed army fighting their twisted war. What was their next target?
And they didn't have to wait very long to find out. Just 2 weeks after the synagogues, they struck again, back in Sacramento.
That's right. This time, the target was an abortion clinic, or rather, a medical building that housed one.
And did that fit the profile they were building?
Perfectly. The motivation was entirely consistent. You had the explicit anti-Semitism driving the synagogue attacks. Then, targeting a medical office providing reproductive health care. Investigators describe that as having a quasi-religious motivation. Meaning it likely stemmed from an extreme fundamentalist interpretation of Christian doctrine that views abortion as murder, often linking it to a broader moral decay they attribute to the groups they hate, Jews, liberals, minorities, etc. It all fits within that same hateful ideology.
And the way they broke into the clinic building, that provided another clue, didn't it, about how many people were involved?
A very strong clue, yes. They didn't just force one door. They made 2 different forced entries into the building, using crowbars.
Why is that significant? Why not just use one door?
Well, think about it. If you're committing a crime like this, speed and stealth are usually key. You want to get in and out fast, draw minimal attention.
Right, smashing 2 separate doors seems inefficient, noisy.
Exactly. Highly inefficient, doubles the noise, doubles the risk of being seen. A lone perpetrator would almost certainly just force one entry point. The fact that they used 2 strongly suggested at least 2 people working together, maybe dividing the task to get inside quicker.
Yeah.
It really cemented that 2-suspect theory.
And they actually got a witness description this time.
They did. A garbage collector doing his early morning rounds saw something suspicious. He saw 2 individuals, described them as slim, wearing dark coveralls, actively using a crowbar on the building.
Did you see them leave?
Yes. He saw them get into a car, described it as light-colored, kind of square-backed. He specifically compared it to a Volvo.
Okay, so the pieces are definitely starting to come together now. They still don't have names, but they have a likely area of Operation Reading Yuba City area.
Yeah.
They have a methodology, coordinated hate crimes, multiple attackers, significant planning. They have trace evidence, dog hair, feathers, paint chips. And now a witness description and a vehicle type.
Right. The net was tightening, but they needed that one concrete piece to connect all this circumstantial evidence to actual people.
Meanwhile, the police hadn't given up on finding the car stolen from Gary Mattson and Winfield Motter. That was still a critical loose end.
And they found it. On July 7th, about 5 days after the murders were discovered, the car was found abandoned on the side of a road about an hour south of Reading.
Okay, so potentially getting closer to the suspect's home base. Did the car yield much evidence?
It was immediately secured and sent for forensic processing, absolutely. But the real breakthrough, the one that led directly to the arrests, came from something else entirely. Something more mundane, almost.
What was that?
Just dogged, persistent police work. Specifically, checking the stolen credit card. An investigator had been tasked, working closely with the credit card company, Citibank Visa in this case, to monitor Gary Mattson's credit card activity. every single day.
Just waiting for the suspects to slip up.
Exactly. Hoping they'd get careless, use the card somewhere traceable, and after days of nothing, bingo.
They used the card. Where? And for what?
They used it to buy ammunition. A lot of ammunition, over $2,000 worth. They placed the order with an arms supplier down in Arizona.
$2,000 worth? What kind of ammo?
All kinds. The order was huge. And the person placing the order identified himself as Gary Matson, the victim.
Using the victim's name? Brazen.
Incredibly. And here's the crucial mistake. He told the supplier to mail the ammunition package to a P.O. box, a specific P.O. box in Yuba City, California.
Yuba City, that's right, the geographical area they were already suspecting between Sacramento and Redding.
Exactly. This was it, the direct link they needed. The police knew this was likely their one big chance to catch them red-handed.
So they set up surveillance on the P.O. box.
Immediately. They arranged to intercept the package when it arrived at the Yuba City post office, and then they waited. It must have been incredibly tense.
And the suspects showed up.
They did. They walked right in to pick up their package, filled with $2,000 worth of ammunition, bought with a murdered man's credit card. Law enforcement swarmed them.
What was the arrest like?
Fast and decisive. The sources describe the police shouting commands, "Nobody move, hands in the air, straight up, down on the ground." They had them pinned down right there in the post office lobby.
And who were they?
They were brothers, Benjamin Matthew Williams and James Tyler Williams.
Brothers, okay. Now, the police have them, but they face a challenge, right? They suspect them of murder and multiple arsons, but what can they actually charge them with right now to hold them?
That's a critical point. They needed something solid, immediate, and provable to keep them in custody while they built the bigger cases. So they charged them initially with the federal offense of using stolen credit cards to purchase ammunition across state lines.
A holding charge, basically.
Essentially, yes. It was a serious charge, enough to deny bail and keep them locked up, buying the investigators crucial time to process the evidence from the cars they were driving from their homes, and to connect all that forensic evidence, the hair, the feathers, the paint, the newspaper, the glass, directly to these two men.
Let's talk about the Williams brothers themselves. Because their profile wasn't what people might expect for perpetrators of such violent hate crimes.
Not at all. They defy the stereotype of the, uneducated, rough around the edges extremist. Both Benjamin Matthew and James Tyler were described as very unassuming, clean-cut, neatly dressed.
Uneducated?
Yes, both were college-educated, bright, articulate. They could present this very normal, almost respectable facade.
But underneath
was this incredibly deep, toxic belief system. A fervent commitment to religious fundamentalism mixed with virulent white supremacist ideology.
That combination of intelligence, education, and extreme radicalization, that seems particularly dangerous, doesn't it?
It absolutely is. Articulate extremists can be far more effective recruiters, more sophisticated planners. These weren't just angry individuals lashing out. They were educated men who had consciously chosen violence, believing they were justified by their interpretation of religion and their racial hatred.
And the scope of their planning, their intentions, became terrifyingly clear when police searched the car they were driving when they were arrested at the P.O. box.
Oh, yeah. The arsenal they found in that car, it was stunning. Absolutely stunning.
What did they find?
We're not talking just a handgun under the seat. This was a mobile arsenal. Semi-automatic rifles, multiple pistols, loaded shotguns, all ready to go, chambers loaded.
Loaded weapons in the car.
And hundreds of rounds of loaded ammunition, plus thousands more rounds in reserve. Boxes of it. Investigators looked at this and didn't see self-defense. They saw preparation for war.
An all-out war, as the sources put it.
Exactly. They believed the brothers weren't just reacting, they were actively pursuing some kind of master plot or scheme, and this arsenal was part of it.
Amidst all those guns and ammo, was there one particular item that immediately screamed connection to the Manson-Motter murders?
Yes. Tucked away in a satchel on the front passenger floorboard, they found a homemade silencer.
A silencer?
Homemade. Think about it. An execution-style double murder. Victim shot in the head, likely while sleeping. And now you find a silencer designed to muffle the sound of gunshots in the suspect's car. That was the immediate, direct physical link they needed to the specific nature of the Happy Valley crime scene.
Okay. And they also figured out how the Williams brothers might have known Matson and Motter. right? It wasn't random targeting in that sense either.
Yeah, it turns out there was a connection, however mundane it seemed on the surface. Both Gary Mattson, one of the victims, and Matthew Williams, one of the suspects, shared an interest in horticulture, plants, gardening.
And they knew each other from?
The Reading Farmers Market. Investigators discovered they had booths set up very near each other at the market.
Wow, so they were practically neighbors at the market.
It seems so, which suggests Matthew Williams likely knew who Mattson and Motter were, knew they were a couple, and specifically targeted them based on his anti-gay ideology, using that casual farmers market proximity as his way in, perhaps. It wasn't just abstract hatred. It was targeted personal execution of people he knew, at least casually.
So the Williams brothers are in custody on the credit card charge. Now the investigators need to build the airtight cases for the arsons and, most critically, the double murder. They need motive and forensic proof linking them specifically.
And for Benjamin Matthew Williams, the older brother, establishing the motive wasn't difficult. He basically broadcast it.
He wasn't shy about his beliefs.
Not at all. He was described as being well-versed in the Bible, or at least his interpretation of it, and he was quick to use scripture to justify the killings.
Which passage specifically?
Leviticus 20, verse 13. The investigators reported him quoting it readily. If a man lies with a man as one lies with a woman, they shall both be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them.
So in his mind, executing Gary Mattson and Winfield Motter wasn't murder, it was
a religious duty, a righteous act, carrying out a capital punishment ordained by his creator, as he saw it. The motive was crystal clear. Pure, religiously justified hatred of gay people.
And they got confirmation of this mindset very quickly, didn't they? Through a jailhouse visit.
Astonishingly quickly, yes. Less than 24 hours after the arrest, the brother's mother came to visit Matthew Williams at the Shasta County Jail. And those conversations, they're routinely recorded in jail settings.
What happened in that conversation?
It's chilling. His mother was obviously distraught, saying something like, "I can't believe you did what they say you did," and Matthew's response, according to the tapes, it was cold and direct. He apparently shot back, "What did they say I did? That you took out 2 homos. Why wouldn't I do that?"
Wow. Just flat-out admission, almost boasting, no remorse.
Zero remorse indicated, just justification. That taped conversation became powerful evidence for the prosecution, confirming the hate crime motive directly from his own mouth.
Okay, so the motive for Matthew is clear. Now, the searches of their properties, what did they find at James Tyler's place, the younger brother?
James Tyler lived on a sort of small farmhouse property, and there they found more ammunition. Thousands and thousands of rounds, stockpiled, everything from small caliber .22s up to .223 rounds, the kind used in semi-automatic rifles like AR-15s, just a massive amount.
Consistent with the arsenal in the car, preparation for something big.
Exactly. And then at Benjamin Matthews' house, they hit the jackpot, forensically speaking.
What did they find there?
2 crucial things related to the murder. First, the murder weapon itself. The rifle used to kill Mattson and Motter. And of course, ballistics would later match this rifle to the homemade silencer found in the car Tyler was driving.
Okay, murder weapon secured. What else?
Hate literature, boxes and boxes of it, just stacks of pamphlets, books, flyers, the whole spectrum of hate. Anti-Semitic, anti-Black, anti-Hispanic, anti-gay. Matthew Williams was described by investigators as an equal opportunity hater. His house was like a library of extremist propaganda.
And did they find anything linking them specifically back to the Sacramento arsons?
Yes. A final damning piece of evidence, proudly displayed on Benjamin Matthews' wall like trophies, newspaper clippings detailing the Sacramento synagogue fires and the abortion clinic fire.
He was keeping souvenirs of his crimes.
It certainly looked that way, flaunting his involvement, claiming credit. It tied him directly to those earlier attacks.
Okay, so they have the suspects, the motive, the murder weapon, confessions, hate literature, clippings. But now they need the science to weave it all together. This brings us to the forensic scientist, F.A. Springer. His job was basically to connect all those tiny pieces of trace evidence, right?
Exactly. Springer had this monumental task of linking the physical evidence from 4 different crime scenes, the murder site, the 3 synagogues, the clinic, back to the Williams brothers and their properties. We're talking firearms, fingerprints, DNA potentially, and crucially that trace evidence. The dog hair, the chicken feathers, the paint chips from the unignited bombs.
So how did Springer connect those specific items, the hair, feathers, paint, to the brothers?
He focused on James Tyler's property, the farmhouse. When investigators searched it, they didn't just find ammo. They found the source environment for that trace evidence.
The animals?
Yes. The place was teeming with animals. The source described it as having more ducks, geese, and pigeons, one of each kind, one of every color that I could imagine, plus dogs. They found hairs matching the specific dog breed found on the bomb wicks. They collected feathers directly from the chicken coops that matched the feathers found on the devices.
So the farm was the source, and the paint chips.
They found those too. Small flecks of paint consistent with those found on the devices, likely from tools or surfaces in the area where the bombs were made.
And did they pinpoint where on the farm the bombs might have been assembled?
They did. There was a shed behind the main house, looked like it was used for garden tools, animal feed, that sort of thing. Inside that shed, they found fuel container, gasoline cans that were the exact same type as those used in the synagogue fires.
So that shed was likely the bomb factory.
That was the conclusion. Springer was able to forensically link the specific dog hairs, the specific chicken feathers, and the paint chips found on the incendiary devices directly to samples collected from James Tyler's residence, particularly that shed area. The assembly location was confirmed scientifically.
Okay, that ties the brothers, or at least their property, directly to the arson devices. What about the abortion clinic attack? How did they link them to that scene, specifically the witness seeing two men in coveralls?
This was another brilliant piece of forensic work by Springer and his team. Remember, the witness saw two slim figures in dark coveralls using a crowbar.
Right.
During the search of one of the farmhouses, it's not specified which brothers in this part of the source, but likely Tyler's, given the context. They found a blue jumpsuit like coveralls.
Was there something on it?
Yes. Embedded in the fabric of that jumpsuit were hundreds of microscopic fragments of glass. Tiny, tiny shards.
From breaking the clinic window.
That was the theory. Springer analyzed the physics of it. When someone smashes a large pane of glass, like a window or glass door, with force, say, with a crowbar, the glass doesn't just shatter inwards. There's a blowback effect. Tiny, almost invisible fragments fly backwards onto the person doing the smashing, onto their clothes, their hair, their skin.
So the presence of those tiny fragments was actually evidence of being close to the breaking glass.
Exactly. Springer meticulously collected these microscopic fragments from the jumpsuit. He then compared their physical and chemical properties to glass samples taken from the broken window at the abortion clinic crime scene, and also to trace glass fragments found on the crowbars recovered from the Williams brothers' cars.
And did they match?
A perfect match. The glass from the jumpsuit was consistent with the glass from the clinic window and the crowbars. It was undeniable proof that blue jumpsuit found at the Williams property had been worn during the break-in at the Sacramento abortion clinic.
Incredible. So with all that, the motive, the confessions, the weapon, the literature, the clippings, the trace evidence, the glass fragments, they had now scientifically linked Benjamin Matthew and James Tyler Williams to the double murder, the 3 synagogue arsons, and the abortion clinic attack. A complete picture.
Exactly. The evidence was overwhelming. So the next step was court. The Williams brothers were first brought to trial on the federal charges related to the synagogue and clinic arsons.
And how did that trial play out? Was it straightforward?
Not entirely. It became quite strange, actually, mainly due to Benjamin Matthew Williams' behavior in court.
What did he do?
He seemed absolutely determined to take all the blame, apparently trying to shield his younger brother Tyler. He took full credit for the arsons, trying to make it look like he acted completely alone.
Was he remorseful at all?
Not even slightly. He used the courtroom as a stage for his hateful ideology. He showed immense pride in the crimes. Sources say he even seemed pleased, proud almost, when one of the witnesses during the sentencing phase compared him to Adolf Hitler.
Wow. And what about James Tyler? Did he say anything?
Complete opposite. James Tyler remained utterly silent throughout the federal trial. Didn't speak about his political views, didn't admit or deny involvement, just presented this completely blank, stoic facade.
Did Matthew's attempt to take the fall work? Did it help Tyler?
Not entirely. The evidence linking both of them, particularly the trace evidence from Tyler's farm, was strong. The federal jury found both brothers guilty of the arsons.
And the sentences for the arsons.
James Tyler received 21 years in federal prison. Benjamin Matthew, the apparent ringleader, got a longer sentence, 30 years.
Okay, so significant federal time for both. But the state murder trial was still looming, right? And the stakes there were even higher.
Much higher. The Shasta County prosecutors were seeking the death penalty against both brothers for the murders of Gary Mattson and Winfield Motter.
What was the legal basis for seeking death?
2 main factors. First, the crime itself involved a double murder, which is often a capital offense qualifier. Second, the murders were committed during the commission of another felony, specifically burglary. They broke into the home with the intent to kill. That combination made it a strong case for the death penalty under California law at the time.
And Benjamin Matthew, was he cooperating with the murder investigation?
Cooperating isn't the right word. He continued his public pronouncements. He gave interviews to primetime media outlets, openly confessing to the murders again, but framing them in his own twisted way.
How did he frame them?
He called the victims lawfully executed for committing capital crimes against the Creator. He talked about his desire for a beautiful, clean, pure, white society. It was pure, unadulterated hate speech broadcast nationally.
Investigators must have wondered, was this genuine belief spilling out, or was it still strategic?
That was the debate. Many investigators suspected it was still calculated. They believed Matthew was painting himself as the sole, fanatical killer, the driving force, hoping that if he took all the blame, maybe Tyler could somehow get acquitted on the murder charges.
Why would he do that?
The fear was that Matthew wanted his brother out, free to continue the mission, the war of hate they believed that they were fighting. So the prosecution knew they had a critical task. They had to definitively prove that James Tyler wasn't just a passive follower, but an active participant in the murders themselves. They needed Tyler's hand directly on the crime.
And this is where that deeper forensic analysis, tying Tyler specifically to the murder scene and weapon, became absolutely vital. What were the key pieces of evidence against Tyler?
There were three really powerful pieces. First, the homemade silencer. That required some technical skill to make or modify.
And Tyler had that background.
Yes. James Tyler had previously worked in a local machine shop. Matthew didn't have that kind of technical background, so the theory was strong. Tyler likely provided the skills to create the silencer, making him a co-conspirator in the planning stages of the execution.
Okay, so involvement in preparation. What about the weapon itself?
This was huge. When forensic examiners meticulously processed the murder rifle found at Matthew's house, they lifted a latent print from the barrel. Not a fingerprint, but a palm print.
A palm print? Is that more significant than a fingerprint?
It can be, yes. A palm print suggests more prolonged or forceful contact with the object than just a fingertip might. And whose palm print was it? James Tyler Williams's.
His palm print on the barrel of the murder weapon.
Undeniable. That placed James Tyler's hand, quite literally, on the instrument used to kill Matson and Motter. A devastating piece of physical evidence.
Okay, silencer connection, palm print on the gun. What was the third piece tying Tyler to the scene?
It came back to that answering machine tape, the one the FBI had been working to enhance.
Did they manage to clean it up?
They did. They were able to isolate the voices sufficiently to hear something crucial in the background while the fake message was being recorded. A second voice.
A second voice.
Saying what?
The enhanced audio revealed a second person saying, quite clearly, make it as long as the first one.
Referring to the fake message they were recording.
Exactly. It proved, beyond any reasonable doubt, that two people were present during the commission of the crime and the immediate cover-up attempt right there in the victim's home. And other evidence, like fiber evidence, also placed James Tyler in the victim's stolen car after the murders. The case against Tyler was now incredibly strong, independent of his brother.
So it looked like both brothers were facing almost certain life sentences, possibly death for Matthew. The prosecution had them tied to everything.
It seemed airtight. But then Benjamin Matthew Williams took one final desperate action.
What did he do?
While he was being held in a single cell, awaiting the murder trial in the Shasta County Jail, he committed suicide.
He used a razor blade. And critically, investigators noted he had staged his bed using pillows, blankets, to make it look like someone was sleeping in it.
Trying to delay discovery.
It appeared so. A final act of defiance, perhaps? Or an attempt to disrupt the legal process as much as possible.
And his suicide must have had a huge impact on the prosecution's case against Tyler, especially regarding the death penalty.
Absolutely devastating. A major part of their strategy for seeking the death penalty against Tyler involved presenting the dynamic of the two brothers working together, Matthew as the charismatic ideological leader and Tyler as the technically skilled enabler. With Matthew, the primary actor and self-confessed killer, gone.
The dynamic changed.
Completely. Proving the specific aggravating circumstances needed for the death penalty against Tyler alone became much, much harder. Legal experts quoted in the sources said it made the death penalty highly unlikely for Tyler now. Matthew's suicide, in a grim way, partially achieved his goal of protecting his brother from the ultimate penalty.
So how did it end for James Tyler Williams?
Facing that mountain of evidence, the palm print, the voice on the tape, the trace evidence, the connection to the silencer, James Tyler Williams, chose to plead guilty to the murders of Gary Mattson and Winfield Motter.
He pleaded guilty, avoiding a trial and the potential, though diminished, risk of the death penalty.
Exactly. In exchange for his guilty plea, he received a sentence of 33 years to life in state prison for the two murders.
33 years to life. And that's on top of his federal sentence for the arsons.
Yes. Crucially, the judge ordered the state murder sentence to be served consecutively to his 21-year federal arson sentence.
So add those together.
It's a total effective sentence of 54 years to life, which, given his age at the time, ensures, as the investigator stated, that James Tyler Williams will almost certainly never see the outside of a state prison again.
He was effectively neutralized.
He was. A dangerous individual who might have indeed tried to carry on his brother's hateful mission was taken off the streets permanently. Hashtag outro.
So when you step back and look at this entire deep dive, it's just staggering. A double homicide, 3 synagogue arsons, an abortion clinic attack. All meticulously planned, all interconnected, all fueled by this singular, toxic, white supremacist ideology.
They genuinely saw themselves as soldiers in a holy war, didn't they? Acting as God's hand on this earth in their own minds. It's a chilling mindset.
And the only thing that really stopped this plot, which clearly had ambitions far beyond what they'd already done, I mean, that arsenal speaks volumes.
Right. What stopped it from escalating into the full-blown racial holy war they seemed to be preparing for was just relentless, brilliant detective work and forensic science.
Connecting these dots that seemed so separate at first, tracing dog hair and chicken feathers from a bomb wick back to a specific farm shed in Yuba City.
Linking a palm print found on a rifle barrel to one specific brother, finding that single newspaper clipping from Redding inside a burned-out box in Sacramento, enhancing an old answering machine tape to hear a second voice. It's incredible work.
And the source material here really hammers home a crucial, uncomfortable truth. Hate groups are not some abstract boogeyman. They are real. Their planning can be sophisticated, patient, and deadly.
And their members aren't always easily identifiable stereotypes. These were educated, articulate men. They weren't hiding out in some remote compound initially. They were living among their neighbors, participating in community events like the farmers market, all while harboring these genocidal beliefs and plotting murder.
That's the really unsettling part, the ability to blend in while planning such horror.
It is, and it underscores that these acts weren't random fits of rage. They stem from a coherent, albeit deeply disturbed, political and religious worldview, a mission. But it's also important to note the response from the communities targeted.
Yes, the sources mention that, a powerful message of resilience.
Absolutely. One quote captures it perfectly. "Your malicious acts of bigotry have only succeeded in bringing our communities together even stronger. Hate didn't win here."
Still, the ending with Benjamin Matthew Williams. His suicide wasn't an act of remorse. It seems like it was one last strategic move, aimed at protecting his brother, maybe hoping James Tyler could somehow continue the war of hate.
That's the final chilling takeaway, isn't it? Matthew understood, in his own twisted way, that the ideology, the cause, was bigger than him. He failed to get his brother freed, ultimately, but his final act speaks volumes about the long-term commitment and the self-sacrificing fanaticism that can drive these extremist movements.
It really makes you think. The fight against this kind of calculated, ideologically driven hatred isn't just about catching criminals after the fact. It's about confronting the belief systems themselves.
Exactly. How do you dismantle an ideology that convinces educated people to become murderers?
So here's something for you, our listeners, to consider. If extremists like Benjamin Matthew Williams are willing to plan even their own deaths as part of a strategy to advance their hateful mission, what does that tell us about the level of vigilance, the depth of understanding, and the sheer tenacity required from communities, from law enforcement, from all of us to truly counter and neutralize the threat of organized domestic terrorism and the ideologies that fuel it?
A difficult question with no easy answers.
Indeed. We'll leave you with that thought to ponder. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.